Hello again, everybody. Daniel Gotera out here at Texans Training Camp, day 3. First one with pads, and joining me today is Brandon Scott of SportsRadio 610, formerly, by the way, of KHOU. He worked on our digital team for a long time. Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing great. Always good to be with you guys. Glad to still be a friend of the station.
Yes. We call on you from time to time. Today we're going to talk Texans. But first, before we do that, let's get into the news of the day, right? A former Texans player suspended by the NFL. Finally, the news came down. Deshaun Watson, 6 games. That, to me, seems kind of light, given some of the allegations. What are your thoughts on the announcement today?
Yeah, I just didn't think there was ever going to be a perfect scenario for the NFL, probably unless that they suspended him for the entire season, and even then, they were going to get criticism from another side about it being too punitive. So there was always going to be, one extreme to the other on what decision that they finally came to, but to their credit, they did find that he broke or violated the personal conduct policy. Now, being accused by dozens of women of violating them in a sexual way, does that translate to a 6-game suspension? I think that's a fair question to ask, and to look at the NFL and say, hey, did you guys really give enough thought to this?
Yeah, no, I think so too, and especially when you look at other suspensions from around the league, right? Yeah. I mean, Calvin Ridley gets suspended a whole season for betting $1,500 on it. So the proportion of the suspension is going to raise some eyebrows for sure. That's something the league is going to have to answer to if they don't extend the suspension.
Well, then that's the thing. So a couple of things that are different about this process, right? This was the first, at least major suspension, but the first, to my knowledge, that Judge Sue Robinson, the former federal judge, was considering. So she's actually the one that meted down this punishment. Now, will the league decide to appeal? Will they go in another direction and figure out if they want a more punitive punishment? That's something for them to decide. Of course, we saw the day before, or the night before, the NFLPA, which called me a little skeptical. I feel like they might have already known what was going on.
Yeah, I think that's when we got a good idea of that this suspension was going to be probably between that 4 and 8 game range. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So when they came out the night before and said that they weren't going to challenge whatever punishment was doled out, and when they challenged the NFL to do the same, you kind of felt like you knew which direction this is going. But I would caution football fans, to remember, as much as you want to hold the NFL accountable, they've never proven themselves to be sort of this good, moral authority or anything.
Right, because they're all over the map on all these suspensions. So Lovie Smith was asked about that after practice today, and he was pretty short about it too.
Now, what happened again? Another player somewhere for somebody else's team. I hadn't paid a whole. I mean, as you can see, 91 guys here, kind of occupying all of our time. I know the rest of the league is kind of moving on, and whatever's happening there, good for them,
Thanks, Coach. All right, that was Lovie Smith. And look, let's talk Texans now, because I think one of the big things about this camp so far is that it's football first. Man, last year was just so awkward. Everybody kind of focused on Deshaun coming onto the field, shooting the video in the morning. I just felt that cloud hanging over this franchise was really, really detrimental to what they were trying to do. They had a new coach. There was a lot of issues last year. But this year, with Lovie in charge, it just seems like it's football first, and that's, to me, refreshing. I'm glad we're kind of getting back to it.
Well, on top of the awkward and unfortunate Deshaun situation, you were also in a state as a team, the Texans were, of not having a lot of young talent, not having a lot of young players to say, even if you wanted to distract yourself from the Deshaun stuff, you didn't have a lot of players to really hang your hat on. Now you fast forward a year later, you've got the 5 players. That's not a lot of a draft class, but you got the 5 players from last year that are second-year players now. And then at the very least, I know the situation with John Mechie is really unfortunate, and prayers to him, but at the very least you've got 5 or 6 guys from this draft class that you want to look at. That's 10 to 11 guys that you feel really good about that are young, not to mention some of the older veterans that are here as well that are going to contribute to the team. So there's a lot of football to consume and to even get excited about, especially at this time of year.
And you have a quarterback who is clearly taken on the leadership role. I mean, we saw him at the press conference, and boy, the first thing that stood out to me is physically he's bigger. Like you could tell he put in a lot of work. All the guys talk about Davis Mills and what he's done. What have you seen? I think he's been pretty crisp so far. Lovie Smith says he's protecting the football, which is what you want out of your quarterback during practice. What have you seen out of Davis?
Yeah, and to his credit, the point you were making about him looking bigger and stronger, that was something that he told us going into the offseason that he wanted to focus on. From Davis, it was wanting to get his body stronger, and he's done that. It looks like both upper body and lower body. Pep Hamilton, the offensive coordinator, has talked about wanting to get his footwork right, or at least improve it a little bit in his drops and just some of the more mechanical parts of playing the quarterback position. And so I'm noticing some of that. I, like you, have noticed that he's crisp, not turning the ball over, seems to have authority over the offense. Nothing that he's done has been overly impressive or anything that's going to wow you or make you think, wow, that guy's going to the Pro Bowl next year. Or
no, but stability is a huge part. I mean, that's a huge part of development, right?
No, I think it's a huge step, because when you talk about last year, there was little to no expectations, or at least a bit of uncertainty coming in, whether he looked good or not. There wasn't an expectation that he would be the leader of this football team, and he's fulfilled that so far. So far, so good. And I thought that Monday, the first day in pads, has been Davis Mills' best day so far.
You asked an interesting question to Lovey afterwards about Derek Stingley working with Brandon Cooks afterwards. I didn't notice that. You did. I thought that was a really cool thing for a young guy and a veteran to get together, especially Brandon, who's been around for such a long time. I thought that was an interesting question. Lovey appreciated it. That's what you want to see, especially at a position like DB where you're going to be on an island. You better learn from the best in the business on your team, and Brandon's that.
Yeah, and I was just fortunate in positioning and where I was standing.
Give yourself a little bit more credit.
And I did kind of see out of the corner of my eye. I see 13. I see 24. I know those are numbers you should already know. 13, but 24. Derek Stingley Jr. is going to be a number to remember, I think, for a long time. But yeah, you want to see, the cliche saying is iron sharpening iron. Well, this is, quite frankly, your best receiver, your best offensive weapon, and hopefully your best defensive back, maybe your best defensive player on the team. Certainly as a number 3 overall pick, your best cornerback. So you want to see Brandon Cooks as a guy who's been around, ultimate professional, has no weaknesses in his game, to be quite honest with you. Helping out the young kid, getting some extra work after practice. Derek Stingley, to his credit, was involved in almost every drill until the very end when they did 2-minute stuff. Early in the practice, I felt Brandon Cooks schooled him a little bit with a quick double move. And
that's going to happen.
And that's going to happen, and that's good for him.
Yeah.
It's good to see that Brandon Cooks is sharp like that, and it's good to see that Derek Stingley's getting those learning lessons early on in camp, and that they're willing to take the time out after the fact and work on some of that stuff. So you love to see that as a Texans fan.
All right, forgive the blowers, the mowers that are going all over the place. I have yet to find out the purpose of these things. We sit here and do these stand-up all the time, and I still haven't really figured it out. Okay, let's go listen to some sound from today. Lovie Smith, Rex Burkhead, Davis Mills, and Laramie Tunsil, who was out there. This is what they had to say.
It's a different game when you get the pads on. You try not to make too many big impressions on where you are until you put together a few days like this. So it's good for get first day in pads. We'll practice in pads the next 2 days, really. So we should be able to see some more things from our team. Quarterback continues to protect the football. We're progressing along, adding different situations, which we want to get to. Day, of course, we finish up. Post-game going to end up in a 2-minute situation, so that's really important for us. No major injuries to report.
I feel really good. I think I've developed a lot since the end of last season. I think I felt the progression at the end of last year, and then really taking into this off-season, the momentum and stacking on it has allowed me to come out here and start playing really fast at the start of training camp and throughout OTAs. So, I'm just excited to keep progressing. I don't honestly think too much has changed. Obviously, the assurance of being the starter, that's the one big thing that changed from this time last year. But other than that, I'm still the same football player. Try to come in the building every day with the same mindset and kind of be myself, and that's kind of my leadership style. Come in, be the same person every day, and then when you need to step up and call someone out or hold someone accountable, then you can do that, but people will respect you if you're doing the same thing every single day.
Physically he's in great shape, arm looks great, mentally, he stepped up his leadership even more. Some of our installs and stuff as an offense during meetings, he's leading it, he's telling guys what to do, which is super impressive to me, and it's going to help his leadership skills even that much more. And so, I love his confidence out there. I love how he's being commanding in the huddle and really taking control of the offense and leads us down the field.
I for sure pride myself to help my teammates out, get better rushes on different opponents. But, they help me out too with different rushes. And I'm just glad to have veteran guys like Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison and Johnny Gotera going on his 3rd year. So we're going to get better each and every day of practice.
All right, so there was Laramie Tunsil. His favorite word of the day is dog. Described everybody as a dog, which is good, I guess, more comedic relief. But seeing Laramie back is nice for sure for this team. I mean, they're going to need him to step up his game. Last year he got hurt. The year before that, we know about all his things up front, false starts, and all the things that he's had on this team. But seeing Laramie back is huge, especially if he plays that Pro Bowl level.
For whatever flaws that Laramie Tunsil might have, he is still, let's say, top 2 or 3 most talented players on this football team.
Oh, yeah. They're paying him like it.
Well, and as Lovey mentioned, they pay him more than anyone. Now, that had more to do with the circumstance and situation and things that have nothing to do with right now. But I digress on that. Laramie Tunsil, a huge part of what this team is going to do, protecting Davis Mills' blind side in the passing game, but also in the running game. We can't talk about it enough about how badly this team needs to improve, not just from an efficiency and production standpoint, but also how that balances things out with the passing game. You can't really have a really good passing game if you can't keep them honest with the run game at all.
Right.
If they don't have to respect you as a run offense at all. And so Laramie Tunsil is going to play a role in that.
Well, Lovey said the offensive line was probably one of the strongest suits of the team.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised to hear that, given some of the issues that we've had the last couple of years over here. But, I mean, they look big, they look healthy, they look physical, and that's kind of what he's alluding to.
Yeah, I asked him if he thought the defensive line was perhaps the deepest unit that they have, and then he mentioned the linebackers, and he did mention the offensive line in passing. But think about what they did there. They went out and got A.J. Cann at right guard, somebody that started his entire career before suffering an injury last year in Jacksonville, also paired with George Warhop, their new offensive line coach, and they drafted Kenyon Green with the 15th overall pick. So the expectation there is that the offensive line, and move Titus Howard back to his natural position, don't want to forget that he's playing right tackle. So the reimagining and reshaping of the offensive line, I think should bode well for them in the running game. And yeah, Laramie Tunsil should be right there in the thick of it.
All right, Brandon Scott, Sports Radio 610. You can hear him all week. What time?
2 to 6 with Clint Sterner on Sports Radio 610. Check it out.
All right, we look forward to listening to you talking Texans. Day 3 in the books. We'll be back tomorrow from Texans Training Camp.